From Fox 8 Sports, this is the Overtime Podcast.
From the Fox 8 studios in New Orleans, this is the Fox 8 Overtime Podcast. I'm Vasilios, that's Sean Fazan. Before we get started, remember to rate, subscribe, like, review, share, the whole nine. Whatever you guys do helps, and we're able to get more content out to you more frequently. So, Sean, we had a little bit of Saints availability today. I'm sure we're going to talk about that.
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit about that a little bit later. But in this podcast, first off, like you said, the podcast for all things sports, all things Louisiana. Be sure to tune in to Fox 8 Overtime Podcast. Download, rate, review, subscribe, like, share on YouTube. We're getting a great response off of that. So, here we are. Free agency is in full swing. Some would even say it's starting to die down a bit, but it is this Thursday. Moves are still coming and going, but the Saints have made a lot of moves. So what are we going to do? What are we going to explore today? Well, it's simple. Have the Saints gotten better? Because that's all that matters. That is all that matters in 2023. The only season you can play, the only season ahead, are the Saints better? But first, let's just kind of go through the comings and goings and what the Saints have actually done, who they've lost, who they've brought in, and then we'll get into our essential question of today's pod. They're doing work. 11 restructures. We knew it was coming. It's what they do all the time. 11 players restructured their contract, the most recent being Andrews Pete. And according to, I believe it was Nick Underhill, the New Orleans football website, he took a pay cut, then got a roster bonus, and converted that bonus into the signing bonus, did the whole cap magic that they do. So he restructured while at the same time taking a small pay cut. He was the last domino to drop. We had said that at some point Andrews Pete was going to have some kind of adjustment and or get cut, and I am of the belief that they went into the offseason probably thinking one thing about Andrews Pete, but the addition of Carr and what he would cost and just fitting in all into the puzzle, it's probably better to gain the cap space by restructuring him as opposed to releasing him. Now, they have lost 6 free agents of their own. They are, let's run them down. They are Caden Ellis. They are
David
Onyemata, Marcus Davenport, Shy Tuttle, and Deontay Hardy. Am I missing one? Andy Dalton, number 6. Andy Dalton is number 6. They have re-signed 8 of their own guys. Let me get the list right here, so we're not guessing on the air here. Let's see what we got here. They are obviously Jameis Winston. They are, and of course the internet is not working. Get here. Thank you. Here we go.
It is.
Jameis Winston, Michael Thomas, Juwan Johnson, who we spoke with today, J.T. Gray, Calvin Throckmorton, Tano Passanio, and Keith Kirkwood. I don't think they're done bringing back some of their own guys because there were some RFAs, some restricted free agents that they chose not to tender. But honestly, when you're tied up against the cap, a one-year tender can somehow be a little more of an obstacle to take on to your cap space as opposed to a smaller deal or multi-year deal as opposed to just 1 year. Now they have signed from other clubs 5 players, and they are Derek Carr, Shepard, the D-tackle out of the New York Jets, Saunders from Kansas City, Hugo Amade, who was a safety earlier in the process of getting a lot of questions about him. He had been available. He didn't have a team. This was early, even before the start of the legal tampering period, but I put him on this list because he's a guy I think is going to contribute on special teams or at least provide numbers at the safety position. And then, of course, the one yesterday, the one everyone seems to be really excited about, running back Jamal Williams, who had 17 rushing touchdowns a season ago.
Led the league, I believe.
Led the league in rushing touchdowns, had over 1,000 yards for a team that was pretty fun to follow, pretty fun to watch last year in the Detroit Lions.
It's funny that you mentioned that, though, because I don't know if you saw FanDuel Sportsbook tweet yesterday, but they tweeted a video of Kobe and Shaq, and it said when you see Taysom Hill and Jamal Williams on the goal line next season. And so Saints fans should be definitely excited about having those two on the same unit on the goal line.
No doubt. And those two guys know each other quite well. They seem to be very, very good friends, and now they are joining forces here in New Orleans. So, you recall they went into the offseason heavily over the cap, by this point, if you think they're going to get impeded by their cap numbers, that's foolish of you to think that. I sat down with Kai Harley, the guy that makes the numbers work. I'm not sure where he lands in terms of his decision-making, in terms of evaluating prospects and whether or not they're good enough to be a member of the New Orleans Saints. I think that's maybe left to other people. But I think once that decision is made that they want to target a player, now they turn to him. And he does what he has to do to make the numbers work and provide the necessary information for signing that player at that amount and negotiating back and forth with that player's agent. So at this point, you can love what they do with the cap. You can hate what they do with the cap. But at this point, to me, there is no sense in praising or criticizing what they do because it's just what they do. They're going to do it. It is what it is. They operate the way they operate. And over the last 15-plus years, 16-plus years, whatever you want to call it, they've reached the top of the mountain in the Super Bowl in 2009. They've had a crazy run of NFC South championships and playoff appearances and NFC championship appearances. But I think the one thing that might get lost, because when you think about great teams and great accomplishments, the fact that the floor has never dropped below 7 wins, I think is a testament to, I guess, the aggressive style and the risk that you take in terms of, quote-unquote, kicking the can down the road and that sort of thing. But I do think inside those walls on Airline Drive, the fact that they can look and say, we've had major success and we've never really had that year where the bottom falls out.
Yeah.
I think that's something somewhat respectable and probably something that they look at in terms of, hey, what we're doing is working. You can agree, you can disagree, you can think they should lead to more championships. Maybe I agree with that. I think maybe they could have had 1 or 2 more, but that's just where they stand. So, back to the central theme. Back to the central question. All that matters is restructuring, free agents, the comings and goings. All that matters did they give themselves a chance to be better in 2023? Let me answer that. I'll give you your take as well.
Sure.
I'm born and bred in New Orleans. Y'all know that. I did grow up a Saints fan, but working in media, covering this team for the last 15 plus years, my fanboyitis is gone. It's been gone. I'm truly objective. I don't get too high with the wins. I definitely don't get devastated like I used to when I was a kid at the losses. Point being, I'm giving you an objective take here. I don't see how you could look at this 2023 team and think they haven't gotten better. They, to me, are better, look better, prepare, should be better in 2023 than they were a season ago. So in my opinion, the free agency portion of the offseason has been a success. A success. They haven't had to cut anyone. Now, and this is part of the reason why. There wasn't a guy you could cut and get a whole lot of cap space for. That's part of the reason when you do the restructure and all that stuff. The only risk you run is you may have to end up holding on to a veteran that's probably a little past their prime, maybe a year longer or 2 years longer than you initially had hoped. We mentioned some of the guys. Andrews Peak could be one of them. Cam Jordan is as steady as they come. DeMario Davis is as steady as they come at the top of their game still respectively, and they got restructured. So if they did want to part ways with those guys in future years, it's going to cost a little bit more to do so when they come off the books and those dead money charges come due, like in Onyemata's case and I believe in Davenport's case as well. But to me, this team got better. They addressed their 3 biggest needs: quarterback, running back, and defensive tackle. So let's go through it. First off, let me let you jump in. Do you think, as someone who has no real ties to the New Orleans Saints, seeing what you saw last year, seeing what you see developing this offseason, what do you think?
I think I agree with you. I think they're way better than they were last year, at least on paper. And something you mentioned at the beginning of the show, that free agency is starting to taper off a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
We're only 1 day removed from legitimate free agency opening up. So who knows what other moves the Saints could make? We could be in for a splash. I mean, we already had a splash with the Derek Carr signing, but who knows what else they could add, be it a weapon for Derek Carr, be it a defensive presence, playmaker. I think at the very least, if this team isn't better per se, maybe they plateau and they stay kind of the same as they did last season. But it could happen, but maybe not. But even if it does, I feel like they're going to be more exciting to watch now.
Absolutely. And I don't see how anyone could add up the losses, and the gains from who you lost and who you brought in and who you re-signed and who you restructured and not think that this team is objectively better than they were a season ago. Let's go through it. Stronger at quarterback.
Significantly.
Stronger at quarterback. At running back. Stronger at running back. Something that they sorely missed a season ago. A season ago, that other guy next to Kamara, and in this case, who knows how much more this person's going to get with Kamara likely facing a suspension. At the very least, it's a wash at defensive tackle.
Yeah.
Some are calling it an upgrade. I agree. They're a little thin on numbers there. That will get at, they will add on to that soon, if not during this podcast. But at the very least, that's a wash from an area that was bad a season ago.
Yeah.
So it's not going to take a lot to upgrade from that position a season ago. Now, the one area they're weaker because it was a position of strength a season ago, is at linebacker. Slightly weaker at linebacker with the loss of Caden Ellis, who is a guy the Saints view as an up-and-comer. Eventually will be a starter, but he will not be a starter for the Saints in 2023, was not going to be a starter. Thus, they were not going to give him starter money. God bless. He went on the open market, got paid by a DC that knows him quite well, a GM that knows him quite well in Atlanta. He goes and got paid. His growth, though, was really something to watch, and they did not miss a beat from when Pete Werner went down. And Pete Werner was having a phenomenal season before he went down a season ago. So they are a little bit weaker in terms of numbers and productivity at the linebacker spot. So stronger at quarterback, stronger at running back. To me, they're stronger at DT, but I'm going to call it a wash just because of the numbers right now. A little weaker at linebacker. That's a net positive to me.
Yeah.
That's a net positive to me. So right now, as you look at it, the new look Saints and more's coming. We got the draft coming up, and my God, when that comes, we're going to be banging away at the podcast. I can promise you, because I've started my research now. Now that the free agency's kind of tapered a little bit.
Can't wait to see your first mock.
It's coming soon. Biggest
Very
gain.
excited.
Biggest gain of the offseason. I mean, that's no brainer.
No, it's Derek Carr.
It's Derek Carr. You have significantly upgraded at the game's most important position on a team that had a top 10 defense. His presence, everything else being equal, to me is worth 3 wins. To me, It's worth 3 wins. So a 7-10 team to a 10-17 with a guy like Derek Carr. Close second, being Jamal Williams, man. Being Jamal Williams, in my opinion.
A league leader in rushing touchdowns last season. You can't stress that enough. Like, he had 1,066 rushing yards and 17 touchdowns. That is incredible productivity from a running back who was on a team with DeAndre Swift and a number of other running backs. So if he's the guy here, if Kamara gets suspended for however many games, I mean, you as a fan and as an analyst have to be kind of excited about what he brings in terms of power football.
And look, to me, if he can give you what Latavius Murray gave you in his run here with like 120 carries, 550 to 600 yards, 7 to 8 touchdowns, a short yardage guy to kind of pair up with Taysom, I love it. I love that addition, especially at the price that you got him for, 3 years, $12 million. And, of course, the cap hit is going to be low in that first year. That's what the Saints do. Biggest surprise, I've already said it on previous podcasts. It's got to be Jameis Winston. It has got to be Jameis Winston. I did not think he was going to return here. I know he sent out Fantastic statement, and a lot of people certainly appreciated it. I did. I'm sure you did as well. I think there was business reality there. I thought it was interesting how much he harped on the fact that he's not healthy, which probably goes hand in hand with the market that was not there for him, his lack of health, inconsistent productivity over his career, just the whole thing, highs and lows, combined with health. You go out on the open market, and that's what it is. It just was not, and basically his best opportunity to grow, to cash in, if you will, was to come back on a 1-year, $4 million contract. But his addition, given his starter experience, and given the fact the Saints have had some tough luck when it comes to injuries at that position, I think you raise the top-end ceiling, but you also raise the floor a little bit as your backup quarterback.
Definitely.
To me, look at the NFC South. You have the best quarterback room in the NFC South, if not the entire NFC, when you add up the totality of the grades, if you will, from both guys.
Honestly, you look at the history of the Saints' backup quarterbacks. They've had very good backup quarterbacks for years. I mean, Jameis 2 years ago and Drew's last year, and Teddy Bridgewater before that. You always had very capable guys that were able to come in and spot start. Even Andy Dalton last year ended up becoming the starter. And
he gave you 500 play.
Exactly.
And honestly, if worst came to worst, you always have Taysom.
Yeah,
you always have Taysom. So your third string is better than most. So most intriguing development, it's got to be Mike Thomas.
That too.
Look, after Derek Carr's press conference, I sat here and I said there was no way he was going. We know that. They adjusted. I don't know what he could have got on the open market. I don't even know if he tested. I'm sure they did. I'm sure he looked around. But once the Derek Carr reality emerged, it would have been very hard for A, Michael Thomas to choose somewhere else, given all the work he put in, and B, for the Saints to turn away from Michael Thomas, given what their new quarterback just said about him. But to me, other than Derek Carr, there is no more tangible presence. In other words, there is no more tangible, like, his presence, steady presence on the field means more in terms of production, which eventually could lead to wins and losses than Mike Thomas. If he is available for just 75% of the season, forget 100% of the season, 75% of the season, what's that, 12 games? I don't know, 13 games?
Yeah, right around.
That can make all the difference in the world when you talk about the line between winning and losing is so thin. Just think of some of the games last year the Saints lost. How much they could have used a guy like Mike Thomas. So for me, that is the most intriguing.
Yeah, the offensive weapons that they have now with Mike Thomas eventually returning. I mean, we saw Chris Olave saw a lot of double coverage last year. So
I think Chris Olave is a high end 2 as opposed to a low end 1.
Yeah, I think if he's able to put on muscle without sacrificing speed, I think he can eventually get to that 1. But I think you're right. I think he's more of a complement to whoever is the number 1. I think Rashid Shaheed is a great number 3, and I think Derek Carr is going to make use of all those weapons, and Mike Thomas is going to be a cornerstone, if you will, if he's healthy and he returns.
Nothing else. It's the coverage.
Yeah.
It's the coverage that he will attract. And you add in a guy like Jawan Johnson, who we spoke with today. He said he sent over some food recommendations to Derek Carr after his Chipotle experience. So that's certainly good, helping out his new quarterback.
Paid extra for guac.
Already. But he's a guy that's certainly on the upswing with his career and his development. They got him relatively cheap. So you throw in Taysom in the mix. Throw in Kamara, depending on where he's going to be in terms of his suspension.
Sure.
And I do think, suspension or not, if we're going to be fair, which we try to always be, I think Kamara's production has dipped over the years in terms of the big play. I think there's a little bit more there that hasn't reached in the last couple seasons. I know a lot of guys are keying on him, and that is what it is. But big play, running the football, and also being a little more dynamic in the passing game, which isn't always his fault because the ball's got to go his way. Mm-hmm. So I think what it does is the addition, and hopefully everybody's healthy and everybody gets to work, but with the addition of Derek Carr plus all that, there's a juice. There's an excitement. And this organization was stale, and this organization was kind of in a funk into the offseason. But they get the first-round pick with the former head coach. They get the quarterback. and they do their off-season duties, their off-season business, and then here we are mid-March, and you feel pretty good.
Yeah.
You certainly feel better than when this off-season began. And to me, W.
Yeah.
It's a W. Now, when the actual bullets start flying and it's real, and you look at the new pieces and the new coaching staff and the fact that DA is now kind of emerged as as his team, as we've mentioned, and we'll see. But the success or failure is gonna be on their own terms. It's not going to be kind of this Peyton hangover term. It's going to be on their own terms. So what's left? A little bit left. I think. I don't. Let me check Twitter because it's always a good thing to check Twitter here during the podcast.
If we didn't check it last time, we wouldn't have gotten that Michael Thomas news.
Michael Thomas stuff on here. What could be next? I think at some point they're going to have to address the punter situation. They don't have Blake Gillikin under contract yet, at least as far as we know. I did see him at the facility today, so I'm guessing that's a pretty good sign.
Do you think they retain Will Lutz?
Yeah, he already took the readjusted contract restructure.
I must have missed that,
which was basically a pay cut.
Okay,
can get it all back and makeable incentives. But I think you'll see them add another linebacker. They brought in, was it Ty Summers, the special teams guy that could add another linebacker to the mix. We'll see about the safety position. They're going to have to bring in another D tackle. I think they're going to draft a D tackle as well. You got to have at least 4 going into the season. You can't have less than that.
No,
despite some versatility from some.
There's got to be a rotation of those guys.
Exactly. There has to be a rotation because not all those guys can play all 3 downs. So, as we stand here, March the 16th, well, NFL March Madness, if you will. I like the way the Saints have navigated it, and I feel pretty good. And if you're Dennis Allen, you got to feel pretty good. If you're Mickey Loomis, you got to feel pretty good. If you're Kai Harley, job well done. They give you the task, and it's your job to go out and get it done. And he, generally speaking, gets that done. So, who else? Who do you fear in the NFC right now?
Probably San Francisco.
Philly.
Outside
of that, because we've kind of been talking, they'll be back on top of the NFC South, which, yes, I think that's going to happen. But I also think it's foolish to think the NFC South is going to be as terrible as it was a season ago. I think they're all going to be a little bit better.
I think it's realistic that the Saints could finish as a 3 or 4 seed.
I think it's realistic. But I do think the path to the division title is runs through New Orleans, but I don't think it's going to be as terrible as a division from a season ago because Carolina's making moves, Tampa Bay's making moves. We've seen Atlanta certainly spend a lot of money, but I still think when you stack up all the rosters, the Saints are the best. So, I feel good. You feel good?
You should feel good.
Well,
you just finished watching this podcast.
Yes.
For Sean Fazan, I'm Vasilios. We'll catch you guys next time. Remember to like, subscribe, review, share, every little bit of that. We'll catch you guys next time on another episode of the Fox 8 Overtime Podcast.